I never thought I'd be doing a vlog of sorts, but here we are. For those of you who do not know, I have been curating a list of the best boulders in the country over the past few years. The purpose of this video series, The Quest for the Best, is to not only document my journey to climb the best boulders in the country on the top 100 list, but to also show everyone who's interested, the details of these climbs, the close-ups of the holds, the landing, the approach, things that people don't usually talk about, and give a really nuanced discussion of the quality of these problems. Do they live up to the hype? Be warned, this is going to be a lot of really nerdy climber shit. And if you're someone who likes to visit a boulder and experience it all for yourself for the first time, then maybe don't watch. So the first boulder in this series is Critically Acclaimed in Red Rocks. It was put up by Alex Johnson back in 2014 and was found by Tom Moulin. This boulder was really, really highly recommended to me and claimed to be the best boulder in Red Rocks by a lot of friends I really trust, like Max Olatukin and Alex Enright. And for years it was my highest priority in Red Rocks, and I kept trying to plan trips out there, but logistically it's pretty difficult. It's a far hike, it requires a lot of pads, and so it kept falling through. And finally this year I got the chance to do it. The approach is pretty far. It's not atypical of Red Rocks. You kind of just park at the Black Velvet parking and trounce across the desert for maybe an hour or so and get into this little gully, Mustang Canyon. There's a couple ways you can approach the boulder. We went via Railway, which is a V8 on the east side of it. So if you go that way, you kind of walk through this tunnel formation and pop out, and there's Critically Acclaimed to your left. And that's pretty special, walking through a corridor and seeing the problem, but the only thing is it's a little too narrow for a crash pad. So you have to take your pads off, haul them through, and it takes away from the experience a little bit. You can also approach around the other side of the boulder, which I did not do. The scenery and the location's pretty typical for Red Rocks. You're kind of surrounded in this basin by big tall cliff faces and a vast empty desert on the other side. The boulder problem is north facing, meaning that it gets shade almost the entire day. This is a good thing when it's hot out and a bad thing when it's cold out. I wish I'd gotten footage of it, but the hang at the boulder is quite nice. Big flat area. You're kind of surrounded by trees and rocks on all sides, so it feels like a little room that you're in, but it's spacious. Holds on this problem are really enjoyable. The rock is spectacular. Here you can see the start hold. It's huge. It's a very obvious fin feature with a square cut crimp at the top. There's not really any question about where the problem begins. And I wish I'd gotten more B-roll to show you the scale of the hold, but oh well. It's not been trafficked too heavily yet, so it's still got great texture and it's not glassy at all. But I will urge everyone to give that start hold a brush because people tend to neglect it as it's not very difficult. Next hold's a really comfy square cut hold. There's a really fine texture to it, and this is where the beta can vary a bit. The first ascent goes left hand to the right side of the hold, crosses under to pinch it, and then rolls out to an intermediate. Then the right hand flips to a side pull, which is a really cool sequence. However, Dave Mason begins by crossing all the way to the pinch, and then skips the flip altogether and just reaches out to the intermediate and bumps. It doesn't really change the difficulty. I tried it both ways. The crux revolves around this crimp rail, which again I wish I'd gotten better footage of. I wouldn't necessarily say this hold is sharp. The crimps are really quite nice, but it is small and you have to crank on them, which means they will cut your skin. Here the beta varies a bit. You can either go left hand to the right side of the rail and cross over, or you can do a larger move straight to the left side of the rail and then match in. The right side of the hold's a bit nicer and comfier, and the left side's pretty sharply in cut, a little less ergonomic, whichever hand you grab it with. And as with any desert sandstone crimp rail, I could see this potentially breaking one day. The feet through this section are pretty bad smears, a lot worse than I expected them to be, and more technical too. After this, the climbing's pretty standard, just sort of tic-tacking between good holds. It's maybe V6 to this big jug break, and then V2 or 3 to the top. The moves up there are pretty easy, but you're up there and they're just hard enough to keep you on your toes. And finally you reach this amazing horn jug. You're never going to fall off of it. You pop onto the top, and the top out is completely flat like a patio, which is really pleasant. This problem's really tall. It's maybe 25 feet. It's super imposing to stand beneath, and I love that about a boulder. The line is really, really obvious and aesthetic. There's great, beautiful patterns and lichen all over the rock, which sort of makes up for not having a super defining feature, you know, it just being a face. The landing's great, it's nice and flat. I wonder how flat it was when it was first found, but there is one big rock off to the right side of the start, but it doesn't really impact it negatively. It's not really in the landing zone, and if anything, it's kind of nice to stand on it to begin the boulder. As for the grade, it's been given a slash grade of 9/10. I climbed all the other problems in the area, including a couple 10s or 11s, and I did them all second try. And Critically Acclaimed took me an hour or two, so it felt pretty hard to me, but I took V9 as it would be the 100th 9 on my 8A card, and you gotta give those round numbers. I was definitely in my head while climbing on Critically Acclaimed because I'd been wanting to visit it for years and it just hadn't happened. It's a far hike, it's logistically difficult, and so I put a lot of pressure on myself to ascend it, and then I think that made the process a little more difficult. And I climbed it really, really, really poorly. Not proud of my climbing on that boulder. Excuse me.
Come on. Yes. Come on. Come on.
Garrett. Yeah, man.
Hell yeah.
Woohoo!
Nice. Major Elvis leg up there.
I can tell.
Oh,
Dude, nice work, man.
thanks. Glad I did it.
Great effort.
Not very good climbing on my part, but
You stayed on.
got it done.
Yeah.
Moves in there.
Sweet.
Ooh. Nice.
The campus was a little too stylish.
I should have kept my foot low to match in, and then fucked up. And then I almost fell that next hole, and I hit totally wrong.
Going out to the slot.
Yeah, it's like the hole's to the left than I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Nice, man.
Finally. Wanted to come here for so long.
It's a good one off the list.
Overall, my final thoughts are that I was not disappointed by this boulder, which is often not the case when things are really, really hyped up. Usually there's some aspect of it that I wasn't anticipating that is kind of a letdown, but this boulder definitely lived up to the hype, and I think it certainly deserves a spot on the top 100 list for single digits.